Welcome to it. It's the Sunday Live Average Joe Sports Show on YouTube. Like and subscribe, and can find us on Twitter as well, the AJ Sports Pod. Give that a follow. Spotify and iTunes. We'll get our shout-outs this morning. Bill Doleman in the upper corner. Elijah Herbel rocking his donkey gear. Chris Schmidt with you as before we jumped on live, we were placing bets on how many times Sterling Schmidt would get screamed at by his mother and older brother Junior as he came in from kind of a weird 48 hours of weather between ice in Omaha and inclement travel. Cost me a couple of ball games, which is totally fine. Safety is so important, but no high school ball for me yesterday. But got the old Christmas shopping done. We will discuss either the hearsay of wild holiday parties or, in fact, true Hollywood parties I should say holiday parties, not Hollywood, holiday parties that you attended.
It's like Charles saying to Shaq, not the right time, bro.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I guess to Kenny.
Hey, Kenny. Not now, man.
Had a good time.
But we might veer off into the old infamous office holiday party. We want to hear about some of yours in the chat. Husker Volleyball front and center. Trip to the Final Four for Nebraska on the line. Can they get Wisconsin 3 times? Final Four bound. That gets going at 2 today. Travis Hunter takes the Heisman. And as the world turns, what I mean by that, Nebraska in hot pursuit of Isaiah World, offensive tackle, fellas, that is making the rounds. Maybe it'll be a one-and-done stop for Nebraska if they're lucky, but you have a precious commodity in this portal era that is absolutely offensive tackles, edge rushers, and quarterbacks, right? Any experienced offensive lineman. We'll see how things go, but that's supposed to happen today as Isaiah World. He's a 2-time All-Mountain West honorable mention, played at Nevada, named All-Mountain West honorable mention in 2024 as well, but some talent there. I like the offensive tackle that's in the portal from Washington as well. I also, Bill and Elijah, I also like the offensive tackles Nebraska has on the team that they've recruited, and they've been, throwing in the slow roaster, so to speak, under Donnie Raiola. So you just want to be ready, available, and a difference maker at that position here moving forward for an important 2025. And you're going to get a look-see. Boston College defensive end, fellas, is second-team All-American, leads the world in sacks in college football with 16.5. So you pray it's not a repeat of the Music City Bowl in Tennessee's guy that made life miserable. But, Bill, we'll start off, dude, a lot to get to. And portal is always newsworthy, and good comments this week from Matt Rule as far as how things are moving direction-wise.
Don't you get the sense that Matt Rule is taking over the position of general manager of the Nebraska football team? Yeah. We talked about this, I think, last week and a little bit on your Hail Varsity show, that Stanford made news, 2 weeks ago when they hired Andrew Luck to be their general manager. And I'm thinking, well, Nebraska already has one in Sean Padden. But that role that he's had seems to be more of an administrative, just making sure that, everything is coordinated between Troy Dannon and Matt Rule and the rest of his staff, and just doing things that the head coach, Matt Rule, doesn't really need to focus on necessarily. But with the hiring of Andrew Luck, and I think it's gone somewhat quiet over the last 2 weeks, but I would think more and more schools are starting to look at their head coach, and maybe head coaches are looking for that position as well, that I want to be an administrator. I'm going to find people to do the X's and O's. We know that there are head coaches who are looking to be back in the X's and O's realm. And we have Dana Holgerson, Gus Malzahn, coaches like that, Chip Kelly. Doesn't mean that they're done being head coaches. But as I said, I think I think for people like Chip Kelly or Holgerson, you want to see how this NIL stuff is going to sort out. This transfer portal is going to sort out. How are the rules going to change from now until 2026 or 27? So there's a long way to answer your question, but I think what we've seen in the last since the Iowa game about 4 months ago, or it seems like, that Matt Rule is moving into that administrative general manager type role for Nebraska and making Dana Holgerson the offensive head coach and trusting John Butler with his defense. But hey, let's bring in Phil Snow to help out and make sure that we have the right recruiting trails with the right, people managing them, like down in Florida for the most part. So I think Matt Rule's tone has gone from, being the head coach that is trying to make sure everybody is treated well and fairly, and we recruit right, and I'm good to mom and dad and all that kind of stuff, to being a little bit more of a suit to a certain extent, right? And maybe it is a little bit more cutthroat because, look, players and their representatives are being a little bit more cutthroat. I'm done. I'm one and done, and I'm gone. And some of these people in the transfer portal are on Team 3, like the Malachi Nelson, who was the 5-star guy at USC, goes to Boise for a year. He's on 3. So that's what I think we are seeing in Matt Rule's role over the past month, is becoming a GM. He'll have a headset on during games. I'm sure it'll be on. But think back when he was he played at Penn State. Did you ever see Joe Paterno with a headset on calling plays? No. Bobby Bowden? No. Tom Osborne did, because he was the offensive coordinator. But I see Matt Rule right now changing his tone and his assignment of himself to being that guy who's going to manage Nebraska's roster, probably salary cap, all that kind of stuff.
Well, and Elijah, you got to have, and Rules touched on this, you got to have some guys that are high level talent evaluators and get those fellas in. And speaking of talent evaluation, courtside.
I knew if I filibustered long enough, Gary Sharp would get in.
He's got the Superman cape. How are you, dude?
Good. It might be loud in here. So
you sound fine.
Okay. All right. We're good to go. Welcome to Ames.
Hilton Magic.
Johnny Orr. It's one of my first interviews. He was a party.
Yeah. He was when I was a little kid, because I came to a lot of Iowa State games. It was pretty cool when they play Here Comes Johnny, and he'd walk on the floor out of the locker room. I mean, he's a legend here. They have a club upstairs for season ticket holders, and they've got the patented Johnny Orr look where he goes like that. That's like the huge statue in front. Let me see if you guys can see this. So Hoiberg's number is up in the rafters. I don't know if you'll be able to see it. Can you see it?
Yeah. We saw the rafters.
We saw the rafters. and we saw the jerseys.
You delivered there.
It's up there. Yeah.
As a quick aside here, have I ever told you guys the story of the time that I showered with the Iowa State football team?
Hold on a minute.
Whoa.
Actually, I would rephrase that. The Iowa State football team got to shower with you.
That makes it sound a little weird now.
I guess it was better than the Penn State team.
No, well, I was going to say, just because I mentioned Joe Paterno a couple of moments ago, did that trigger a memory?
Wow.
No, they're just seeing Ames. I mean, it's all kind of right there. I went to a football camp out there, and I had to drive back to Lincoln, and I was all sweaty. And they're like, no, we don't have showers available. I'm like, well, I need a shower. I'm driving 4 hours back to Lincoln. So they just took me to the football facility and let me shower up with the team. So there's the story.
Take it easy today. All right.
Next on the Hallmark Channel. Yeah. Thanks for that.
Okay, guys, we are 9.5 minutes into the show here, and I think we've buried the lead just a little bit when we talked Matt Rule's role as a GM, portal visitors. Nebraska has a long snapper.
Yeah.
Hey, that might be one of the most important additions of this whole portal season.
It is.
I mean, what is his WAR? Do we know, is his WAR like 1.4? Is it 1.5? Hey, but subtly, in all seriousness, that's a need, and Nebraska went and got a need. Now, I wish they would have done it last year, but at least it shows me that they're not, just willy-nilly, that they have a plan in the portal. So
that's important. It looks like Jamari Butler off to LSU, Prince Will to Ole Miss. Sharpie, we were talking a little bit about Nebraska getting a visit from Isaiah World as the world turns. Offensive tackle from Nevada. That the market is dictating lots of zeros after a certain number. And where you at with Nebraska's activity, aggressiveness here? Nothing major's been announced from additions aside from Noweri, but we know Nebraska's been active and busy. There's just not any finality yet to it. It's still early in the portal season. Do you like Nebraska's tracking of some spots on the field?
I do. But don't you guys think that unless you're looking for a quarterback or a wide receiver one, there's not really any like major game changers? They're just good pieces to what you already have that are in the portal. And that's kind of my observation. The quarterbacks, there's a lot of quarterbacks out there. There's some really good wide receivers that Nebraska's in on. But other than that, it's kind of like, it's not frontline guys, but it's not like second or third team guys, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they have a plan, but I think they're attacking it from, okay, this is where we have a need. This is what was a deficiency. This is where we need to build up the depth. Let's go after this guy. I mean, I think earlier this week it proved that if Nebraska wants to play the game, that they will play the game. What I want to see, though, I want to see Nebraska pick up a really good portal pickup that doesn't have a connection to the Nebraska staff. Like a guy that Nebraska went out and pursued and they won a battle. Not because they had an assistant coach on the staff that had a connection, but some other, something else. That's what I would like to see, and I think that'd be a good sign. But I like their plan. I just, I've always been Nebraska will make the biggest jump next year with the guys they already have on campus.
Well, and to your point, Gary, like when you look at Indiana, all the guys they brought in, Colorado is a bit of a different story, but even there, like you're not going to go find guys that are consensus first team all conference guys in the portal. Can you get first team all conference guys in the portal? Yeah, if you nail your evaluation, if you understand their fit within either your offense or your defense, and you think, we can get a lot more out of this guy than somebody else. But you're not going to go find guys in the portal that stand out right away as being first team all conference guys. Do you find a couple of those guys every single year in the portal? Yes. Is Nebraska going to be in play for those guys? No, likely not, unless, as you said, Gary, you have a connection on staff. So that's kind of what the portal is to me, is you're trying to find guys that can be solid starters for you. And hey, if you really nail the evaluation, you get it right, they end up turning into an all-conference type performer. Awesome, but I don't think that's what you're necessarily looking for in the portal. You're looking for guys. I mean, Matt Rule's talked about it before. Like, his initial goal was to bring in guys with multiple years of eligibility left, that they could come in, fight, develop, and turn into all conference guys. I think that the tone has shifted a little bit, where you're going to go find guys that plug a hole for you, guys that you can plug in as starters that are going to come in, play the role you need them to. Are they going to be first team all conference? No. Do you need them to be first team all conference? No, not necessarily. And if you get lucky and the guy fits so perfectly within your scheme that he becomes first team all conference, more power to you. But that's not necessarily what you're looking for in the portal anymore.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see, as we move forward, where is a guy like Grant Bricks? How's his development come along? Because he's a guy that you went out and fought for and won on the recruiting trail. When we talk about going to the high school route, we know that Evans has been nice at guard, but Nebraska was portal heavy with some key parts of their offensive line last year, obviously with Scott and Mizuka when he was ready to go. I do like Gatula and what he's been able to do. You've got some experience, some grizzled vets that have battled the injury bug at left tackle as well with Teddy P and Turner. What would be really cool for Nebraska is to find a guy on each side of the football that turned it that is Trey Palmer good. That's ideal, right? But when Mickey brought Trey here, he was a guy that was little used from LSU, but you saw the upside. There was potential there, but man, that guy dominated some ball games, kept you in some ball games. Was the difference in the Iowa game. You wonder if Nebraska can go find a couple of guys, maybe a safety on the defensive side of the football that can be all world for you, or emerge into that, and then find somebody on the offensive side. Bill,
Yeah.
Go ahead, Gary.
Do you guys think it's like the first time Nebraska is in the aggressive portal era? Is they can add a coach that brings people with them. Like, we're expecting a Kentucky wide receiver to come. Whoever the defensive back coach is, maybe they bring somebody. So that could kind of change the dynamics of how Nebraska, we judge Nebraska in the portal, because to be honest, like, the number one target the first 2 years hasn't been what I think it has to be, whether it be a Jeff Sims or, even a Banks. They needed Banks to be more consistent. So maybe that's something new with Nebraska. They're adding guys to the staff that have past connections, that they might bring somebody who, oh, by the way, they didn't play much, but I saw it. I have a relationship, change of scenery, familiarity, boom, they blow up.
mm-hmm.
Let me ask you this about offensive linemen in the portal. During my drive to Omaha on Friday, I had plenty of time to think and plan out this show. Does it seem like, and I would love for somebody to do the research, because quite simply, I don't want to, but in the transfer portal, are there fewer offensive linemen that go, and that you might see like one or two offensive tackle or guard or something like that? Whereas wide receiver or quarterback, there just seems to be a frenzy, that there's all kinds of quarterback, there's all kinds of receivers, a few more running, but when you go down the portal availability, it seems to me that the higher ranking offensive linemen, there just aren't that many, because they don't leave. Is my observation correct on that?
They get taken care of to stay. I mean, you've got your, some of your schools like Michigan and Harbaugh when he was there, they put together a really good one more year fund. All right. So
Right.
You got to take care of the fellas that have grinded along for you, and you don't want to lose them. You do all the work to get them ready and all conference level, and then you're out the door. They're out the door because you're being cheap. That can't happen either.
Do you guys also think that maybe, and I agree with you, Bill, because if you're a big time offensive lineman, you're probably staying where you're at, or you're into the NFL. But maybe the route is, and kind of look at the top 10 of the Heisman, the 10 finalists for the Heisman last night. They all started kind of somewhere else, whether it be at Group of 5 or FCS. Maybe, and Nebraska just made an offer to a Bowling Green offensive lineman. Maybe, like in Nebraska's case, you always want to call. I'm a big believer in cultivating high school offensive linemen and defensive linemen. But you might get one or two in the portal. But is the route for a Nebraska to get, if they need an offensive lineman, the Group of 5, to go to a Bowling Green or a MAC school, and find that guy that was a 2-year starter, 3-year starter, that has one more year, you have some cash, and he uses you to get to the NFL, and you use him to help to still develop those young guys behind you that you don't want to play right away, so that they get snowed under, I should say.
That's a good path, I think, to go on. And I'm of the opinion, look to the lower levels or the G5 first and see if it works out. I mean, we all, going back into this season, I thought we all were pretty impressed with Northern Iowa's offensive line, right? I mean, they just as an example, they had 3 guys on that line that for our area dudes, and they moved well and moved the line well. So there's so many players in college football. Guys are going to slip through the cracks, or they're under recruited, or they're not on the camp circuit, whatever the case may be. They'll end up somewhere else There's a lot of good coaches at smaller schools as well that do a hell of a job, and you may get lucky more times than you'd like to think going that route. Just find a guy and just look at his ability, and obviously, yes, judge the competition he's going against, but guys from the MAC or Northern Iowa or pick a small school, and you nailed it with the Heisman example. Guys can play ball. They're just not always found by the big schools.
My other thought on the offensive line too is it culture? The offensive line is probably the closest group on a football team, right? And you don't have prima donnas in skill position rooms that are, fighting for catches and carries and whatnot. But good morning. But those guys are in the room together and they're tight knit. I think of those Nebraska teams back in the day with Milton Dan, and they're just kind of all in it together. And they really don't want to leave. If you've got the right culture on the offensive line, guys don't want to leave their buddies.
Well, Sunday morning pancakes were awesome too.
Can I ask the question here, maybe rhetorical, but do we think it's a coincidence that in the transfer portal NIL era, Army and Navy have had their best seasons that I can remember in a long time collectively? Both schools, the schools that don't have to deal with the transfer portal and don't have to deal with NIL. Oh, now that all the other schools are dealing with that, Army and Navy have some sort of resurgence where Army's top 25. Navy is 8-3 going into that game. They finished 9-3. Huge win. Loved watching that game yesterday. Do we think that's a coincidence that the schools that get to keep their teams together and develop because they don't have to deal with the transfer portal are now magically having fantastic seasons? I don't know. That struck me yesterday as like kind of interesting, because in the 21st century, football has not been kind to Army and Navy, but now they're seeming to come back with a resurgence. They both have, I think, fantastic head coaches, but they also get to keep their roster together and develop guys for 4 years, and you see the results.
Get old, stay old, baby. Do it on the hardwood. Do it on the gridiron.
Except if you're Nebraska. I used to believe in that. I was a strong proponent. Probably Nebraska staying old hurt them the last 2 years.
What I mean by that, though, is make sure you got guys that are talented that stay around and perform.
That part I agree with.
Don't be afraid to go young either. I hear what you're saying.
Yeah. So who's going to start at center next year?
Is it going to be Guidance, the Michigan guy? I mean, does Nebraska have a good shot at landing him? Or I don't know. Yeah. He can play it, but Evans can play center. But he's really good at left guard. I don't know that you move him unless he wants to move.
What about Sam Sledge?
That's the one I was going to ask Gary about, because I know Gary's watched Sam Sledge forever. So that was the one that I've always kind of had penciled and even pinned in as Scott's heir apparent.
And the one thing I'll say about Justin Evans as a former offensive lineman, he really, really is I'm not sure I should say exceptional, but he compared to the other offensive linemen, him pulling around and being the lead blocker, very valuable. Not many teams have a scheme where the center does a whole lot of pulling. The centers pull occasionally. Will teams create plays so their center can pull because they have a center that can pull well? Yes. Justin Evans, though, valuable as a puller, and that's kind of, I think we talked about this a little bit on Wednesday. We talked about it yesterday on the weekend edition of Hail Varsity Radio as well. Like, Justin Evans, I think they see his value as a guard because of his ability to pull, and I don't think they necessarily want to move him back to center. Could you? Yes, I think he showed himself to be good there. That's kind of what I thought the plan was coming into this year. After watching him for a season, he's valuable as a guard that can pull, and I don't think you want to move him back to center and take away some of that ability.
What is your take, Sharpie, on Sledge's readiness right now?
Hey, Ryan, thank you. Appreciate it. Sorry about that, Schmidt.
No, you're good. Sledge, is he ready? Do you think he's ready?
I think they've kind of brought him along slowly, and he got his feet wet this year. I think he's ready. I mean, look at his dad was an all Big 8 offensive lineman. He's got some dog in him. He's got good DNA. You know, he's got a position where you got to be a cerebral thinker because you basically run that offensive line. And I wouldn't have a problem with him being at center. You know, it's going to be an interesting offseason with the offensive line because is Teddy going to give it another go? Is what's going to happen with Turner? You know, I think Gatula showed enough during the course of the season when he filled in that I mean, is he penciled in as your tackle, one of your starting tackles next year? You know, you've got you mentioned Grant Bricks. He had his year to redshirt. Now let's see, with a whole nother year of conditioning, strength and conditioning, and reps, what happens to him. I think it's a fascinating offseason with the offensive line. I think they've spent a lot of equity in recruiting the offensive line at the high school ranks over the last couple of years because they had to. Now it's almost like 25. It's when it's supposed to come to fruition, where you have a solid 8 to 10, and a lot of them are homegrown. You know, I'm not saying, hey, Ben Scott, get out. Justin Evans, no. You know, it's you've invested in your high school recruiting. Now it's time to see those guys move to the forefront and start to play. But I think it'd be okay if fresh faces along that starting 5.
And this is Raiola's line now.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
These are the guys that when he came in, that you would start to look at as sophomores and juniors in high school, so that by year 3, for the most part, unless Benhart's going to get a 9th year of eligibility and end up with 87 career starts, which is basically the only stat that they give offensive linemen anymore, is pancakes and starts, right? But this is going to be Donovan Raiola's offensive line. These are the people he's targeted. These are the ones that he's comfortable with, that have been around him for a couple of years. So now is when you really start to see, you know, the fruit of his hiring and retention, aside from a quarterback that you seem to have had an influence on bringing into Nebraska.
So, Elijah, as the offensive line expert on the show, let me ask you this. Will the offensive line be better next year? And we go, where were you the year before? Because they have a better relationship with their offensive coordinator, who probably trusts them more than the previous offensive coordinator.
I think you're onto something there. And I also wonder how much the guys that you have coming up in the system fit what you want to do just a little bit better in terms of being able to move, the type of run schemes that you'd like to run. Because Nebraska last year ran a weird mix of zone blocking, and then you also had a lot of power and counter schemes as well. And that's modern football. Teams are going to run both. I wonder if you lock into things you do better. Because I talked about Justin Evans' ability to pull. Don't think he was as good as in a zone blocking scheme where you're just whole offensive line kind of moving in unison, getting right or getting left. Running back picks a hole. Could the running back always find the right hole? No. Did the offensive line always do favors there? No, not necessarily. I wonder if you have a little bit more cohesive with Donnie's line of guys that are able to do, I would assume, the power and counter scheme just a little bit better, where you can kind of stick with that and roll with that, not have to have a running back pick the right hole and make a man miss at the second level. I wonder about that. A name that I wonder about in terms of development is Tyler Canuck. We haven't mentioned him as a potential right tackle. I saw Jacob Hood enter his name into the transfer portal, and that kind of made me go, because you've heard a lot over the past season and a half, I'd say, about Canuck. You haven't really seen him on the field much. I wonder how they feel about what he could do potentially filling in for Benhart at the right tackle position, because he's another guy that I think kind of fits what Donnie and what he wants his offensive line to be just a little bit better. So that's kind of what I wonder. If you have Donnie's guys and you have an offensive coordinator that listens to the offensive line coach, do you have a more cohesive set of play calling with what your offensive line strengths are? Because I don't think necessarily all the guys in the offensive line had the same strengths last season.
Hey, I have to pause here. I have to run.
Yeah.
So but I look forward. Wednesday night, are we going to do this live again?
Sure.
All right.
Sounds good to me.
Can I hold
Brother,
that basketball?
take one. Yeah, take one from half court.
Hey, by the way, so Omaha is a 35.5-point underdog today.
Oh,
Iowa State's number 3 in the country. Iowa State is right in front of me warming up. They are gigantic. Yeah. They're a legit national championship contending team.
Well, their coach is gigantic too. So at least this, you know,
he's wearing he's got the Smedium on today.
Oh, dear Lord. Sharpie, God love you. Thanks for making time, bud.
Thanks, guys. Have a great weekend. Have a good finish to the show.
Appreciate you. There he is.
That's a gamer right there.
That's fun.
You know, that's a gamer.
And on site. I was going to piggyback off of what you said, Elijah, with and what Sharpie introduced. But you're just going to have, directives from Dana Holgerson. Here's what I want the offense to do. Here's what I want the offensive line to be able to do. And I'm not, Dana's got enough bulldog in him that he loves. I mean, it was fun the last 3 games of the year, if you're a Nebraska fan, to see Nebraska lean on the run game, see times where that offensive line would move the line of scrimmage, and they got into some good rhythm. I think that's what you can be really excited about, is you're going to see the offense get into rhythm in the pass game. You're going to see the offensive line get into rhythm with the run game. You got Emmett coming back, and damn, did he look good. You have Dowdell, that is a guy that can keep getting better in his young football life from a vision standpoint. And then you got these young guys you're waiting on to kind of get a shot and wow. So there's going to be not just emphasis, but demands made. And I think Donnie's all about it. I think he's excited to have someone come to him and say, brother, what do you want to do? And what can we do in the run game? I think he's all about it.
And one of the things that I think is an important quote we heard from Dana Holgerson, this is right after he got the job, was talking about his own development as a coach, saying, I'm not necessarily the air raid guy that I once was. Yes, that's my roots, but I've also learned through a lot of coaching that it's easier to just hand it off and score 7 points than it is to throw the ball all around the yard and get 7 points. So in relation to that, that's why I kind of mentioned the fact, do you have an offensive coordinator that will listen to your offensive line coach? Because I don't necessarily think the scheme of what the offensive line has been learning over the past 2 seasons is necessarily what Dana has shown his running game to be over his career. But he talked about his own development. You got to have an offensive coordinator that listens to your offensive line coach and understands, okay, the guys in the room for the past 2 years have been repping this. They've been getting better at this. And I look specifically at your classic power, counter, ISO trap plays. I think that's Donnie's roots. I think that's what Marcus Satterfield wanted to be. That's what these guys have been getting better at for the course of the last couple seasons under Coach Raiola. Do you have an offensive coordinator that meets with the offensive line coach, says, all right, this is what you guys do well. I'm going to get this incorporated within my offense because it's what the offensive linemen have been working on behind the scenes for years now. That's going to be an important factor here for me is, are your offensive coordinator and offensive line coach on the same play in terms, or on the same page in terms of what their offensive line can do on the field, what they play like, what schemes suit them well? That's an important factor in making your offensive line look good, is understanding what they do well.
Canuck, I think, coming back from a broken leg. That's why there's not been a ton from him, but you like some of the options. Bill Doleman's here, Elijah Herbel, Chris Schmidt. It's the Average Joe Sports Show Sunday live. We love catching up with you Sundays at 10:30. Gary Sharp was live courtside in Ames as he's gearing up for UNO basketball, play-by-play man for a number of years. They're at number 3, Iowa State. Husker Volleyball gets rocking against Wisconsin coming up at 2:00 from the Bob Devaney Sports Center. We ask you to like and subscribe on YouTube to the Average Joe Sports Show, Spotify, and iTunes. We can dive in. We'll keep you posted on anything that happens as we're on here, portal-wise, but we'll talk about some volleyball here as well. And
hey, can I throw this on the table?
Please.
So we are so Major League Baseball is in its free agent period. What if Major League Baseball had the transfer portal instead of free agency? And
that'd be hilarious.
I mean, you're like, of all the, Rob Manfred just continues to have, the pitch clock was a nice idea. I don't get the pizza box size bases as being a significant change to Major League Baseball. Now he's putting in there the golden bat rule that he's talking about. At any point in the game, you can have your best hitter go to the plate in a situation, which just to me is the stupidest rule ever. Right?
You struck a nerve. You struck a nerve with me. I know this isn't a baseball show. Just add in the classic. And high school baseball's had it for years. The re-entry rule. At any point, hey, you know what? You don't want to lose your guy defensively, but you want to get one of your better batters from the bench out of the dugout and into the game. Let him go pinch hit and then re-enter your player back in the defensive lineup. High school baseball's been doing it for years. Do that instead of the golden batter.
No. Okay. Yeah, no. But I'm just saying he's got some wacky ideas. So why not, if you're Rob Manfred, just say, hey, you know what? Instead of free agency, let's do like college football and have the transfer portal instead of the free agency. Could you imagine what baseball would be like? I mean, if any other professional sport,
there'd be 8 teams.
with any other professional sport decided to go, let's do what college football is doing, right? Which should give people a perspective on how stupid this era of college football and transfer portal is. And we're not done. This transfer portal is open while teams are playing for conference championship games, A, playoffs, B, bowl games, C, and oh, by the way, recruiting, and we're going to do it again in the spring. So all of these, when college football is wanting to be like professional sports, what if professional sports decided to show the complete idiocy of this transfer portal era, right? And decide, you know what, instead of free, you guys just go wherever you want to go. And maybe the downtrodden Dodgers could elevate their organization by just bringing in as many players as they possibly can, as long as they were under the player roster, right? Meanwhile, like the Twins or somebody are like, hey, what about us over here? And they pull in all the group of 5 trend. You know, it ought to illuminate, when you think about it that way, how crazy this transfer portal idea is. And they need to get to contracts. They need to get into a situation where you are getting this amount of money for this many years with a 3rd or 4th year option, or however you want to do it. But for college football to continue this way, for the roster upheaval, you are in danger of alienating the fans if you miss, right? And
you're blowing it up.
There's no identity with players that you're going to.
That's what's killed college basketball.
Exactly. Only people care about college basketball is late February and March. And I can remember
those of us that like to go to the sports book.
Yeah. But I can remember, when you had players like in the Duke, North Carolina rivalry, even though we may have no regional interest in that game, you knew who those freshmen were, the sophomores who were continuing on that rivalry.
Baby.
Right. Tyler Hansborough against all of Duke. Right. But now with, that's killed college basketball. And I fear that it might kill college football down the road before, but college football has a chance, I think, to save itself if it can right it. But if the pros conducted roster changes like college football now, they would go out of business.
I think the closest we have in professional sports to the transfer portal is European soccer. I know you guys don't want to talk European soccer. I'll just give you the little 2-minute spiel. The teams have to pay both a fee to the player that they're bringing in. So it's not trades. You pay a fee to the player in terms of a contract. The player's agent and the team agrees to that ahead of time. And then the team has to, that wants the player has to agree to a fee with the old team. So they get paid in exchange for the player. And then that other team can go use that money to go pay out other players to replace that loss. How would you feel about a system such as that, where it's not just NIL portal, the player gets paid $3 million to change teams? What if the teams had to pay a fee to a developer's fee, a finder's fee to the other team for finding them if they go steal their guy out of the portal? That would change things slightly.
That'd be all right with me. I mean,
and that's the closest we have to a portal in professional sports. That's why I bring it up. But that's I guess a better system, but it's still not perfect.
Going to get some shout outs in. Andrew was first. Tuck, good to have you. Mike in from Cali. Appreciate that. I know Captain's been in. Game Dog Anonymous here as well. And some other folks. Fong Wei is here. Good to have you. Funky Giblets checking in. Jeff Snitley, part of the Boulder Peace Treaty crew. Coach Brandon says Nebraska needs some Christmas gifts in the portal.
Hold on.
Coach Brandon also says all he wants for Christmas is 10 wins in 2025. I love it.
How many names did Funky Giblets type into the name generator before he finally came up with a one? Like, yeah, that's the one.
That's it.
I'm going with Funky Giblets. Yep.
It's unique. There we go. Joe T is here. Says, thank God we got a long snapper. Tyler's here. Good to have you. Tyler, and who else?
We are pro long snapper acquisitions. Okay. And look, the transfer portal for guys like us, great. I mean, it's phenomenal for sports talk and podcast fodder and speculation and all of that. So look, it's fun, but it's just not the healthy way to go.
Well, you have John checking in. Bottom line, we have no idea how good or bad this team will be. The only thing we will know is that thankfully our schedule is weak next year.
Well, that's the problem. Is you say you don't know if
We
your
think
team's
the
going to be good or
schedule's
bad, but the
then-
schedule's weak. But you don't know if the other teams are going to be good or bad. That's the reality of the poll.
Well, and let me ask you this. Let's transition into Travis Hunter. Did you guys think we were watching the Heisman winner this season when the Buffs came to town that second week of September?
Yeah,
It's possible.
Well, given what, look, he was the most talked about player coming into the season, given what he had done, well, out of high school, being a two-way player, being, a two-way at Jackson State and having the hype machine, that the train that he jumped on with Dion. And then, with their play-by-play voice, weekly play-by-play voice, and Mark Jones calling every single game, hyping him up. The Heisman Trophy is another topic of conversation. The bottom line, and in this case, did the best player in the country win it? Probably. Is that the case every year? No.
You got a bunch of blowback though with Genty and the what he did this year for Boise.
I don't discount that. Look, there are some great players that didn't win the Heisman. Ask Peyton Manning. Ask Ndamukong Suh. Right. Tommy Frazier, because Eddie George had a nice game against Michigan at the end of the regular season. I'm just not a big Heisman guy. It's a hype thing. It's who gets the most attention. It's who gets talked about the most during a broadcast and after. But Travis Hunter was talked about when he came out of high school, how special he was going to be, and he shocked the world when he went to Jackson State. He could have gone into Florida State or Florida right out of school and would have been, highly talked about, but he stayed at the forefront because of Dion. The power of Deion Sanders, platform helped him. But look, playing the number, it wasn't like Charles Woodson playing a couple of snaps on the other side and being, the
billing it as a two-way guy.
Right. That was a gimmick. And that's why it's a crime that Peyton Manning didn't win the Heisman that year. But the gimmick of him being a two-way player is what got him the Heisman Trophy. And they kept showing the same couple of highlights over and over of him playing on that side of the ball or returning a kick. Like, see, he does this all the time
against Sparty.
Yeah, he does it all the time. No, he doesn't. So the fact that Travis Hunter won it is the least shocking, perhaps, Heisman Trophy maybe of all time.
Can I say there's a couple of things I want to hit on with the Heisman discussion? Did I think Ashton Genty deserved it? Yes, I do. Am I mad that Travis Hunter won it? No, I'm not. He was a
good ball.
Great player on both sides of the ball. He's going to go have a long and fruitful NFL career. He's that good. It says something when a guy is averaging over 100 snaps a game. Like, that is a ridiculous statistic. Is it as ridiculous as Ashton Genty's rushing numbers? I personally don't believe so. I don't fault a Heisman voter if they look at that and say, man, a guy being great on both sides of the ball, like a real difference maker on both sides of the ball while playing 100 plus snaps, that is special. I think it's awesome. I think he deserves it. I think we as college football
numbers
fans,
are special against, just to go other side of the coin, what he did against Oregon. And I know he didn't have the schedule that Colorado had. I don't, who would I have voted for? Let's play that game for a second. I probably would have gone Hunter though, just because of his impact. And he's not just a guy. He is the guy on both sides of the football. He helps dictate success or failure on both sides, defensively and offensively. I mean, he's a pretty good shutdown corner, and that's the difference to me. I'm still pissed Rocket Ismail got robbed by Ty Detmer.
I think actually you say I think he's a better cornerback than wide receiver. We'll see what side of the ball he gets put on the NFL.
Where do you want to make the money? What's going to make more money? A wide receiver in the NFL or a defensive back? I mean, both are coveted, but a wide receiver, that's the sexy position in the NFL.
Until you shut
receiver.
down the diva as the lockdown corner like Prime did.
But I'll also say as a defensive back, if you're a full-time defensive back, and I look at this from the perspective of an NFL team, if you have a full-time defensive back on roster, it's a lot easier to incorporate them into a couple plays on offense than it is to have a full-time wide receiver that gets incorporated into a couple different plays on defense. Like, you don't do that. It makes a lot more sense if I'm an NFL team to put him full-time defensively and then say, hey, we're going to want to use you offensively occasionally, bits and pieces. I don't think he can go and be two-way in the NFL. I think you can still be very special and be very valuable with limited offensive snaps. I just want to finish up my point about the Heisman, though. We as college football fans, instead of arguing about this, because I think both guys deserved the Heisman. You see that in the voting. It was close. Both guys getting over 2,000 total points is I think kind of underscores that both guys probably deserve to win it. You can't have two Heismans. You have Travis Hunter. All right. Can we at least be thankful as college football fans that it wasn't a quarterback? We've only had one Heisman Trophy winner since 2016 that wasn't a quarterback. That was Devontae Smith in 2020, who was extremely deserving. Can we just sit back and be thankful? Hey, it wasn't just the most all right quarterback, because there's been some guys over the past decade that you go,
Toretta.
I mean,
Gino's a good dude. I like Gino.
But so many guys like, okay, you were a good quarterback
down year, but I like Gino.
And that's been the story of the past 8 years. Is there's been quarterbacks where you go, they were good. Well, were they probably the best quarterback? Sure, just give it to the quarterback. At least we had a competitive Heisman Trophy race with two guys that deserved it that weren't quarterbacks. And hey, hats off to Travis Hunter. Fantastic player. I think he deserved the Heisman.
All right, let me ask you this then. What if he had stayed at Jackson State and he was playing 120 plus snaps per game, putting up the numbers that he did as a freshman and sophomore, both offensively and defensively? The Heisman Trophy does not go to the best player at the Division I or FBS level. Now, how long are we going to call it the FBS level, since there's now a 12-team playoff? But anyway, if he had stayed at Jackson State, would he have been on the radar for the Heisman Trophy? Gordy Lockbaum, way back, was in the Heisman Trophy conversation when he was the star at Holy Cross. So would
the
Deion
Gordy
Sanders,
reference of the day?
There you go. So would Travis Hunter? He probably would have been a gimmick finalist.
Did McNair get in? Steve McNair got into the Heisman.
That's a good question. I'm not sure if he was a finalist or not, but yeah, he was talked about.
I think he was in New York City.
It doesn't go to the best player at the FBS or FCS college football level. It's the best player in college football. So would he have been at Jackson State the Heisman Trophy winner?
Well, to flip it around,
that's hypothetical of all time, but I'm just
that's the Harlan Hart Trophy. Isn't that what Danny Woodhead cranked out a couple of times? Walter Payton won it as well at that level, and
right.
I'll say
he would have gotten. He would have think about his numbers at that
he would
level.
Not have won it. He wouldn't have won it at Jackson State, because I think you can flip it around and you can say, if Ashton Jeanty was playing in the Big 12 or the SEC or the Big 10, does he win it? Yes, probably. Competition matters in the voting for the Heisman. Mm-hmm. I think Travis Hunter was probably playing slightly better competition. Not to say Boise's schedule is a pushover. They had a better schedule than what you've come to expect from Boise State because of how college football has changed. Maybe it was just name recognition with the teams Travis Hunter was playing, which that
does Boise win the Big 12.
That's kind of what I'm getting at here, is if it's a different conference with more name recognition, does Jeanty win it? I think probably, but competition matters in the Heisman Trophy voting, and that's why I say Travis Hunter absolutely would not have won it at Jackson State. But he was fantastic.
I don't think so either. But he's a great player. So yeah, game dog. McNair finished third in the Heisman in '94 at Alcorn State. So
yeah,
I mean it's the same Randy Moss argument,
because Marshall was Division I, weren't they?
Yeah, I think so.
At the time, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You want to talk about the OG of three schools, Randy Moss, Florida State, Notre Dame, and then Marshall. And that sucks about Randy. I hope he gets healed up, man. Mm-hmm. Let's wind down here, the Average Joe Sports Show Sunday Live, and dive into Nebraska and Wisconsin. Bill, you have done so much volleyball in your career. You've done championships. You've been up close and personal, and you've seen this sport explode. It is going to be all sorts of bedlam at the Devaney Center. Nebraska fans have been incredible, and they get the boogeyman again, and they can keep kicking the boogeyman for a third time this year in Wisconsin.
Going Casey and the Sunshine Band on us. Look, it's tough to beat a team 3 times. I'm not necessarily a believer in that, because each game is its own game, right? And Nebraska can't look back on its 2 previous meetings with Wisconsin and say that's the exact same Wisconsin team that we're going to see in the same kind of atmosphere that we're going to see. This is a completely different deal. Wisconsin is a proven winner of a program, so the stage is not going to be too big for them at all. Kelly Sheffield will have his team prepared to play in Lincoln. And look, it's great to see 9,000 people in the Devaney Center, but what is the atmosphere going to be like? A lot of times there's a country club atmosphere at a Nebraska sellout. When Nebraska plays a team that may not be high in the marquee, or they're not used to that setting, that the crowd isn't a big factor. The NCAA tournament is different now, so the crowd has to be a big factor in this game. You've got to try and rattle a team that might be unrattleable in Wisconsin. They've got a front line that's probably bigger than what Omaha will face today at Iowa State. Where do they go? Like 6'4", 6'6", 6'9"?
Yeah, 6'7", 6'8", 6'9".
But Nebraska's beaten them twice. So Merritt Beeson has to play well. She did not play well the other night at all. May have had the worst match she's had as a Husker in the win over Dayton. You can get away with that against Dayton. Harper Murray is probably going to have to play like she did against Dayton to beat Wisconsin. I don't recall in watching the match the other night too much out of Lainey Choboy or Rodriguez. So Nebraska's, they call them their littles, are going to have to be big because they will find spots on the floor, and Rodriguez and Choboy have got to be there defensively. Digging is going to be what wins this, if you ask me, is protecting the floor. And every coach tells you serve and pass. Okay, yeah, that's like third downs and all that, and don't turn the ball over in football. It's the same thing. But I put this on Beeson to have the kind of match she did against Maryland. She can't have another match like she had against Dayton. And Choboy and Rodriguez got to dig everything. And that's the way they're going to beat Wisconsin today.
And if you guys were wondering, according to our friends in the desert, this comes from DraftKings Sportsbook. Nebraska -600 on the money line. And the line has them it's at 2.5 sets. So the question, according to Vegas, is does Wisconsin win a set? I think it'll be pretty close today.
Look at you researching. I love that.
Hey, preparation. I learned from the best at the UNL College of Journalism. You got to be prepared.
Can you go to the old sports book and put I can't.
It's not here in Nebraska because
I'm saying if I wanted to go to our friends at Ameristar, could I go put a volleyball bet down?
You can see if they have it on their boards. I know you can find volleyball some places online.
Okay.
So I think it's going to be closer than that. I think the big story, Wisconsin's got a freshman setter. It comes down to Wisconsin's offense, I think, keeping up with Nebraska. Nebraska is so well-rounded as a team. From defense, the outside pins do a fantastic job. I mean, you got Andy Jackson in the middle. Like, all across the board, Nebraska volleyball is elite. What Wisconsin needs is they need an offense and probably a setter performance that keeps Nebraska's defense guessing a little bit and allows them to keep up. They got to take one of the first 2 sets. You can't go down 2 sets against this Husker volleyball team and expect to win. There's a lot more on Wisconsin, and I think particularly on the freshman setter. How has she learned from the first 2 matchups? But it's still Nebraska's match to lose here. You've won the first 2. You've showed why you're one of the better teams in the country. To me, I don't want to say it comes down to one person, but Wisconsin needs a performance from their freshman setter that doesn't feel like a freshman.
Well, and I'll just say this as we wind it down. The Creighton win over Texas was just incredible. Nebraska's mentality this year, they have had so much fuel as they just came up short with another chance to win the championship a season ago. they have been gunning for this all season. They've played high level. They played well in big moments. And it just dawned on me, Captain Obvious, Dayton came in ready. Dayton was not scared. They didn't blink. They played out of their mind, and they still got rolled. That's how dominant this Nebraska team is. And Elijah, you put it on what Wisconsin needs. Nebraska's, dare I say it, too deep to fail, too big to fail. I mean, they are loaded everywhere. There are problems everywhere on that court. You shut one fire out, and here comes another fire at you. So they have been incredible. And if they get on to the Final Four, that'll be fun.
It's a big match for Nebraska, no question. And they're probably, I would imagine they're feeling more pressure now than they might feel in a national championship match, because when you've got Wisconsin at home with the chance to go to the Final Four, which I think the NCAA finally has allowed volleyball to utilize the term Final Four. When I was calling it back in the day, calling the NCAA tournament, they would mandate you do not, it is the championship round or the national semis and the national finals. And it's like, but it's 4 teams, and this is an NCAA organization sport. Why can't you call it the Final Four? Oh, no, it's basketball only. It's basketball only. Well, I think they finally acquiesced to that and finally gave in because everybody called it the Final Four. But I think if Nebraska is going to win a national title, tonight might be the most pressure pack that they will feel, because they've got Wisconsin at home and have beaten them twice. And Wisconsin, I think, is probably going to come in freewheeling and dealing. I agree, a freshman setter might be problematic, and Nebraska, I said when Bergen Riley said her first match at Nebraska, she will be the best setter in Nebraska history. I still stand by that, and history is going to bear me out on that. But Wisconsin setter has to utilize that size and dish it around and hope they can beat the Rebecca Alec block, Andy Jackson, who I think is the most dangerous player in the country. It'll be a great atmosphere. Hopefully Nebraska can handle the pressure and Merritt Beeson can answer the call.
Selfishly hoping for a sweep so we can get in and out, and I get to my Broncos at 3.
I love it. Make it quick. That's Elijah Herbel. That's Bill Doleman, Chris Schmidt. Big thanks to Gary Sharp. He was joining us from Ames earlier in the episode. We'll do a Wednesday live for you here on YouTube at the Average Joe Sports Show. Like and subscribe. Spotify, iTunes as well for the audio. And the Twitter follow is the AJ Sports Pod. Big thanks to all of you for jumping in. We'll check in with you midweek down the road here with the Average Joe Sports Show.